Chapter 10, The Foreign Exchange Market. This chapter gets into how the foreign exchange market works. It does examine the forces that determine exchange rates and then discusses the implications of these factors for international business. One function of the foreign exchange market is to convert the currency of one country into the currency of another. A second function of the foreign exchange market is to provide insurance against foreign exchange risk. The spot exchange rate is the exchange rate at which a dealer converts one currency into another currency on a particular day. Foreign exchange risk can be reduced by using forward exchange rates. A forward exchange rate is an exchange rate governing future transactions. Foreign exchange risk can also be reduced by engaging in currency swaps. A swap is a simultaneous purchase and sale of a given amount of foreign exchange for two different value dates. The law of one price holds that in competitive markets that are free of transportation costs and barriers to trade, identical products sold in different countries must sell for the same price when their price is expressed in the same currency. Purchasing power parity (PPP) theory states the price of a basket of particular goods should be roughly equivalent to each country. PPP theory predicts that the exchange rate will change if relative price changes. The rate of change in countries' relative price depends on their relative inflation rates. A country's inflation rate seems to be a function of the growth in its money supply. The PPP theory of exchange rate changes yields relatively accurate predictions of long-term trends in exchange rates, but not of short-term movements. The failure of PPP theory to predict exchange rate changes more accurately may be due to transportation costs, barriers to trade and investment, and the impact of psychological factors such as bandwagon effects on market movements at short-run exchange rates. Interest rates reflect expectations about inflation. In countries where inflation is expected to be high, interest rates also will be high. The International Fisher effect states that for any two countries, the spot exchange rate should change in an equal amount but in the opposite direction to the difference in nominal interest rates. The most common approach to exchange rate forecasting is fundamental analysis. This relies on variables such as money supply growth, inflation rates, nominal interest rates, and balance of payments positions to predict future changes in exchange rates. In many countries, the ability of residents and non-residents to convert local currency into a foreign currency is restricted by government policy. A government restricts the convertibility of its currency to protect the country's foreign exchange reserves and to halt any capital flight. Non-convertibility of a currency makes it very difficult to engage in international trade and investment in the country. One way of coping with the non-convertibility problem is to engage in counter trade, that is, to trade goods and services for other goods and services. The three types of exposure to foreign exchange risk are transaction exposure, translation exposure, and economic exposure. Tactics that insure against transaction and translation exposure include buying forward, using currency swaps, and leading and lagging payables and receivables. Reducing a firm's economic exposure requires strategic choices about how the firm's productive assets are distributed around the globe.